afternoon, everyone. You're listening to the CaMMVets Radio Report on WVOX AM 1460 and heard around the world on WVOX.com. This is Jack McGurk with Ken Kreitzer bringing you this half-hour discussion of issues related to veterans and the active military. Now, here's Ken.
Hey, thanks, Jack. Good afternoon, everyone listening to CaMMVets Media here on WVOX 1460. And as our name indicates, we cover cadets, midshipmen, veterans, military proudly since 2008. Now we're going to have a special guest in the second half. Leo Shane, who's deputy editor of Military Times, is going to call in from Washington to talk about the defense budget. The National Defense Authorization Act, which was passed last week by the Senate, confirming the vote from the House, $858 billion, which is more than the bill started out at $773 billion. So
that's right. That's the goal.
Nearly $70 billion added during its proceedings through Congress. It's supposed to go the other way around.
Yeah.
You know, but we're going to talk about that. Each of the services got major investments, including the Space Force and cyber. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Some of the other things we cover. We covered Iona's basketball game last night. They lost to New Mexico 82-74 on a big national stage. The two Patinos, Rick Pitino from Iona and his son Richard coaching New Mexico. Iona now goes out to play in Hawaii. They will play SMU Thursday. And Friday, I had a great day. I went up to West Point to the commissioning ceremony for the Army quarterback, Tyler Tyler, who just a week before ran for almost 100 yards for Army in their win over Navy. And he raised his right hand and took the oath as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army. And we had a chance to talk to him. We also presented him with our award, the Lieutenant Eugene Evans, Lieutenant Colonel Eli Page Howard Award, two natives of Pelham who were outstanding college football players at Morgan State. Both were graduates of Army ROTC, sadly both killed in service. Lieutenant Evans killed in the Korean War, and Lieutenant Colonel Howard in Vietnam. Very well respected in Pelham. So Jack, tell us what's going on your side.
Well, I'll start off with Ukraine. Ukraine said it knocked dozens of missiles out of the sky during a Russian barrage on Friday, but at least 16 hit their targets. Preliminary data from that Friday's wave suggests that 76 missiles were fired, according to Valery Zaluzny, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces in Ukraine. Of the 76 missiles, 72 were cruise missiles of the KH-101 caliber and KH-22 variety. The other four were guided aircraft missiles, KH-59 and KH-31P. Now, the origin of the missiles were from the Caspian Sea and Black Sea. The Ukrainian's top military chief added that 60 missiles were destroyed. In fact, there was also a report that 40 missiles were headed towards Kyiv, but 37 of the 40 were destroyed. So that's a big story for Ukraine being able to knock out all these missiles.
Yeah, they did a great job with that, with the support of NATO forces providing those missiles. But what about the Russians just firing at all of these civilian targets and electrical power stations, trying to put the country into total loss of electrical power in the middle of the winter?
I think it's better to start off with the Fader 7 already.
But the U.S. is poised to approve sending a Patriot missile battery to Ukraine, finally linked to an urgent request from Ukrainian leaders desperate for more robust weapons to shoot down those missiles. White House Pentagon leaders have said consistently that providing Ukraine with additional air defenses is a priority, and Patriot missiles have been under consideration for some time. Pentagon and State Department officials at briefings last week would not confirm the plan to provide Patriots to Ukraine, repeatedly saying that it had nothing to announce. But U.S. officials had balked at providing the weapons to Ukraine because they could be considered an escalation that would trigger a response from Moscow. The Patriot missiles also require significant training, and there were concerns that U.S. troops would have been required to operate it. According to officials, the U.S. plan would be to send one Patriot battery. A truck-mounted Patriot battery includes up to 8 launchers, each of which can hold 4 missiles. The entire system, which includes a phased array radar, a control station, computers, and generators, simply requires about 90 soldiers to operate and maintain. However, only 3 soldiers are needed to actually fire it, according to the Army. Patriot missiles systems and other similar sophisticated surface air weapons are in major demand among U.S. allies, including Eastern European nations worried that they could be Russia's next targets. The U.S. has a limited number of systems and has deployed them across the Middle East and Europe in recent years to help allies protect against threats of incoming ballistic missiles from countries such as Iran. But now, possible Patriot missile system heading to Ukraine, Ken.
Yeah, just an escalation, but it's really what the Ukrainians need. That is basically a defensive system, as you said, to knock down incoming missiles. And it's really kind of out of the Star Wars era of developing defensive missile capability, which the U.S. has got a lot of resources in. We've talked about over the years, but it's just you know, at what point is Russia just going to kind of say enough's enough on their side? And it doesn't look like it's going to be anytime soon, unfortunately.
Indeed, and Lithuania has finalized a deal to procure 8 high-mobility rocket systems in a move aimed at enhancing defensive capabilities in the Baltics. The $495 million acquisition is the latest high-profile sale of the Lockheed Martin manufactured HIMARS systems. We talked about that system a lot on the show, which has gained cachet with allies due to its effectiveness use against Russian forces in Ukraine. And last week you talked about Estonia making a big purchase from the U.S. With regards to that. And both Estonia and Lithuania are Baltic countries in very close proximity to Russia. So I guess they're worried about what Russia's doing next. Could they go for those countries?
Absolutely, big concern. And, you know, so it's this whole question of why Russia is deciding it needs to expand its territory at tremendous loss of lives of their own soldiers, of the impact on the Ukrainian people and others. And also, they're going to be they're basically a pariah. They can't do anything. I mean, no businessman is going to go to, or woman is going to go to Russia now, you know, to negotiate anything based on what happened to the basketball player.
Indeed. And shifting gears a little bit back here, of course, Christmas is coming up. And every year we talk about Wreaths Across America on the show, which is a program where thousands of wreaths are laid on the graves of veterans all over the country. And in fact, over the weekend, tens of thousands of volunteers turned out to lay some 257,000 wreaths on veterans' headstones inside the hallowed grounds of Arlington National Cemetery, just outside Washington. It was the 31st time Morrill Worcester, the founder of the Wreaths Across America, he is the founder of a Worcester Wreath Company up in Maine. They started the Wreaths Across America program, but this is the 31st time that he's made the journey from Maine to Arlington for this wreath laying project. Now, it started in 1992 as a private affair to find a way to meaningfully dispose of an overpurchase of 5,000 wreaths at the Worcester Wreath Company up in Harrington, Maine at the end of the holiday season. And Worcester didn't want perfectly good wreaths to go to waste, so he got permission to place them on headstones in Arlington. And since then, it's grown more and more over the years. And this year, Worcester said Wreaths Across America provided more than 2.7 million wreaths that were expected to be laid on an estimated 2 to 3 million volunteers at 3,702 sites across the nation and around the world. For many at the Arlington event, it was a pretty emotional experience, but Worcester said this year's record 2.7 million veterans tombstones adorned with wreaths distributed by his foundation and a multitude of volunteers and corporate sponsors represent just 6% of the total U.S. veterans buried in cemeteries. He's aiming for 100%. Which would be 42 million wreaths. And Worcester said he has no doubt that we'll be able to produce those 42 million wreaths for every one of those veterans in the near future. But what an event there, Ken. Yeah,
they used to come through Westchester. In fact, they would, their caravan would stop in front of Mamaroneck High School and place wreaths at the veterans monuments there. And, so, you know, they would make a number of stops like that on their path from Maine to Washington, D.C.
Indeed, they also stopped sometimes at the West Point Cemetery up at West Point. You've been listening to the CaMMVets Radio Report on WVOX AM 1460, heard around the world on WVOX.com. We'll be right back after this brief Fox News break, so stay tuned.
He's going to want to talk to this guy first. Okay. So don't transfer him through yet.
Okay.
We have your guess if you'd like to speak to him.
Okay. Leo, hi, Ken Kreitzer, how are you?
Here is the latest update from Fox.
Oh, can hear you great.